Vadodara's mornings carried a peculiar calm. The city stirred slowly, with milkmen clattering their cans, temple bells ringing faintly, and the smell of fresh pav bhaji wafting from roadside stalls. For Ashish, mornings were usually mechanical. Wake up, shower, breakfast with his parents, then off to the textile office where spreadsheets and meetings filled the hours. But ever since Abhilash had entered his life, mornings carried a different weight. He found himself waking earlier, replaying conversations from the cafe, wondering what it meant to have someone who saw through his silence. Their meetings had become routine. Sometimes at the cafe near Alkapuri, sometimes at Sayaji Garden, sometimes by the Vishwamitri river where the water reflected the city lights. Abhilash had a way of making ordinary spaces feel extraordinary. He spoke with ease, laughed without hesitation, and carried himself with a confidence that Ashish both admired and envied. For years, Ashish had lived in compartments: work, family, solitude. With Abhilash, those compartments blurred. He felt seen, even when he said little. One evening, they sat on a bench in Sayaji Garden. Children chased each other near the fountain, their laughter echoing. Abhilash was sketching, his fingers moving with practiced ease. Ashish watched, fascinated. "You always draw people," he said. Abhilash looked up briefly. "They're the most complicated landscapes. Every face is a story. Every posture, a confession." Ashish hesitated, then asked softly, "If you drew me, what would you see?" Abhilash studied him for a moment, then replied, "A man who's waiting, not for permission, but for proof that he won't be abandoned." The word struck Ashish like a chord. He swallowed, his throat tight. "I'm not brave like you." Abhilash shook his head. "Bravery isn't loud. Sometimes it's just showing up. And you've been showing up." At work, Ashish began noticing things he had ignored before. A younger colleague, Rohan, wore a rainbow wristband. Another, Priya, casually mentioned her girlfriend during lunch. No one stared. No one whispered. The office wasn't hostile, just indifferent. Ashish wondered if the world had changed more than he had allowed himself to believe. Yet the fear remained. His parents were aging, his sister's children adored him, and he couldn't imagine shattering their image of him, the dependable uncle, the quiet son. He feared their confusion more than their anger. One night, he told Abhilash, "I don't want the world to know before my family does. But I also don't want to keep hiding." Abhilash nodded. "Then maybe the question isn't, when will you tell them? It's, what do you need to feel ready?" Ashish didn't have an answer. He carried the question home, lying awake in his room, staring at the ceiling fan as it spun endlessly. What did he need? Courage? Permission? Or simply the belief that love could survive truth? Days passed, and Ashish tried to test the waters. Sitting with his sister after dinner, he said quietly, "I felt different. Like I don't fit the mold everyone expects." She looked at him curiously. "Different how?" His throat tightened. He shook his head. "Just, not ready for marriage. Not in the way people think." His sister studied him, then nodded slowly. "You've always been thoughtful. I trust you'll do what's right for you." It wasn't everything, but it was something, and it left him trembling with both fear and relief. At work, he found himself drawn into a conversation with Rohan. They were walking back from lunch when Rohan said casually, "You know, people think Vadodara is conservative. But it's changing. Slowly, but changing." Ashish hesitated, then asked, "Do you feel safe being open?" Rohan smiled. "Safer than hiding. My parents know. My team knows. It's not perfect, but it's mine." He glanced at Ashish. "Why do you ask?" Ashish shook his head quickly. "Just curious." But inside, something stirred. Perhaps the world wasn't as hostile as he feared. Weeks later, during Navratri, Ashish attended a Garba night with Abhilash and his friends. The courtyard pulsed with music, colors swirling under the lights. Couples danced, groups laughed, and among them, two men twirled together, fearless. Ashish stood at the edge, heart pounding. Abhilash nudged him. "Dance with us." "I can't," Ashish whispered. "You can," Abhilash replied. "No one here cares." They're too busy living. Ashish hesitated, then stepped forward. The music enveloped him, the rhythm guiding his feet. He danced, awkwardly at first, then with growing ease. Abhilash spun him, laughter ringing out. For a moment, Ashish forgot the fear. He was simply a man moving to music, surrounded by joy. When the song ended, he was breathless, exhilarated. He looked around. No one stared, no one judged. The world hadn't collapsed. That night, as he walked home, Ashish realized something profound. Silence had protected him, but it had also imprisoned him. And for the first time, he wondered if the cage was beginning to crack. Ashish's days began to feel different. The routines of work and family life continued, but beneath them ran a current of anticipation. His meetings with Abhilash had become the highlight of his week. Each conversation peeled back another layer of silence, another wall he had built around himself. One evening, as they sat in the cafe where they had first met, Abhilash leaned forward. "You know, Ashish, you don't have to rush. But you also don't have to wait forever. Fear doesn't vanish on its own. You have to walk through it." Ashish stirred his tea, staring at the steam. "I keep imagining their faces. My mother's confusion, my father's silence. I don't know if I can bear it." Abhilash's voice was gentle. "You've already borne silence for years. Isn't it heavier than their questions could ever be?" The words struck him. Silence had been his shield, but also his prison. He thought of the Garba nights, of the men dancing freely, of the laughter that had seemed unreachable. He thought of Abhilash's family, their acceptance, their pride. He thought of his own longing, the ache of years spent pretending. That night, Ashish walked home slowly, the city lights blurring in his vision. He passed couples strolling hand in hand, children chasing each other, elders sitting on benches. Life unfolded openly around him, while he remained hidden. He whispered to himself, aspiration and wish, desire and blessing. The names that had brought him and Abhilash together now felt like a mantra, urging him forward. Days turned into weeks. Ashish began to journal, pouring out thoughts he had never spoken. He wrote letters to his parents that he never sent, rehearsed conversations in his head. He imagined scenarios, anger, confusion, acceptance. Each possibility terrified him, yet each felt closer to reality. Abhilash stood by him. They met often, sometimes walking through Sayaji Garden, sometimes sitting by the river. Abhilash shared stories of friends who had come out, of families who had struggled but eventually embraced their children. He reminded Ashish that love was not diminished by truth, but deepened by it. One evening, as they watched the sunset over the Vishwamitri, Ashish said quietly, "I think I'm ready. Not completely, but enough to try." Abhilash smiled. "That's all it takes. One step." The following weekend, Ashish gathered his courage. His parents were in the living room, his sister visiting with her children. The air was filled with the aroma of his mother's cooking, the chatter of family life. Ashish's heart pounded as he sat down. "I need to tell you something," he began, his voice trembling. The room quieted. His father looked at him expectantly, his mother paused, his sister tilted her head. Ashish took a deep breath. "I'm bisexual. I've hidden it for years because I was afraid. But I don't want to hide anymore." Silence followed. His mother's eyes widened, his father's brows furrowed, his sister's mouth parted in surprise. Ashish felt the weight of their gaze, the fear pressing against his chest. Then his mother spoke softly. "Why were you afraid to tell us?" Ashish swallowed. "Because I thought you wouldn't understand. Because I didn't want to disappoint you." His father leaned back, his expression unreadable. His sister reached for his hand. "Ashish, you're my brother. That doesn't change. I just wish you had told us sooner." Tears filled his eyes. The fear that had bound him for years began to loosen. His mother wiped her eyes, his father nodded slowly, his sister squeezed his hand. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't easy, but it was acceptance. That night, Ashish called Abhilash. His voice shook as he said, "I told them. They didn't reject me. They were surprised, but they listened. I feel lighter." Abhilash's laughter was warm. "I'm proud of you. See? Courage isn't about being fearless. It's about being honest despite the fear. Ashish closed his eyes, the weight of years lifting. For the first time, he felt the possibility of living openly, of embracing both desire and blessing, aspiration and wish. Ashish woke the morning after his confession with a strange calm. The heaviness that had sat on his chest for years seemed lighter, as though a door had finally opened. His parents had not rejected him. His sister had held his hand. There were questions, yes, and confusion, but there had also been love. For the first time, he felt he had stepped into the light. The days that followed were filled with quiet adjustments. His mother asked gentle questions, trying to understand. His father remained reserved, but his silence no longer felt like condemnation, more like contemplation. His sister teased him affectionately, promising to stand by him. Ashish realized that honesty had not shattered his family, it had deepened their bond. Abhilash was his anchor through it all. They met often, sometimes at the cafe, sometimes walking through the bustling streets of Vadodara. Ashish shared every detail, his mother's tentative questions, his father's thoughtful pauses, his sister's unwavering support. Abhilash listened, encouraging him, reminding him that acceptance was a journey, not a destination. One evening, as they sat by the river, Ashish said, "I feel like I've been reborn. For years, I thought courage meant being fearless. But now I see it's about being honest, even when you're afraid." Abhilash smiled. "That's the truth. And now you're living it." Their bond grew deeper. Ashish found himself drawn not only to Abhilash's confidence but to his kindness, his ability to see him without judgment. They shared laughter, dreams, and silences that spoke volumes. Ashish realized that what he had longed for was not just acceptance, but connection, the intimacy of being seen and loved for who he truly was. Vadodara itself seemed different. The streets he had walked for years now felt alive with possibility. He noticed the small pockets of openness, young couples holding hands, pride flags in shop windows, Garba nights where men danced together without fear. He realized that the city had been changing all along. It was he who had been standing still. One night, during Navratri, Ashish and Abhilash attended Garba together. The courtyard was ablaze with color, the music pulsing through the crowd. Ashish felt nervous at first, but when Abhilash took his hand, the fear melted away. They danced, twirling with the rhythm, laughter spilling from their lips. For the first time, Ashish felt the joy he had envied for so long. He was no longer an observer, he was part of it. His family noticed the change. His mother remarked on his happiness, his father nodded approvingly, his sister teased him about finally living. Ashish realized that his truth had not distanced him from them, it had brought him closer. In the months that followed, Ashish began to live openly. He spoke honestly with friends, shared his story with colleagues, and embraced the life he had once denied himself. There were challenges, of course, whispers, questions, moments of discomfort. But there was also freedom, laughter, and love. Abhilash remained by his side, their bond evolving into something deeper. They were not just companions, they were partners in courage, in honesty, in life. Ashish often thought of their names, aspiration and wish, desire and blessing, and marveled at how they had guided him to this moment. One evening, as they sat together watching the city lights, Ashish said softly, "I spent years hiding, thinking I was protecting myself. But I was only denying myself. Now, I feel like I'm finally living." Abhilash took his hand. "And you'll keep living, with honesty, with love, with courage. That's all that matters." Ashish smiled, the weight of years replaced by the light of possibility. Vadodara shimmered around them, the city no longer a cage but a canvas. For the first time, Ashish felt free, free to love, free to live, free to be himself. The Vadodara Book Fair was in full swing, sprawling across the grounds of Akota Stadium with rows of stalls, fluttering banners, and the scent of fresh paper mingling with street food. It was a warm Sunday afternoon, and the crowd moved leisurely, families with children, college students with tote bags, elderly couples browsing poetry. Ashish and Abhilash walked side by side, weaving through the maze of publishers and authors. The fair had always been one of Ashish's favorite events, a quiet celebration of ideas and stories. But this year, It felt different. This year, he was walking through it not as a man hiding behind pages, but as someone whose own story had finally been written aloud. They stopped at a stall selling regional literature. Abhilash picked up a Gujarati translation of Giovanni's Room and smiled. "Full circle," he said. Ashish chuckled. "You and that book. It's practically our origin story."